Hey guys, welcome to Chef Grace's Place. It's the week before Christmas and I'm making some biscotti. I love biscotti any time of year, but I definitely make it the most around the holidays because I like to share it with my friends and family, and there's nothing better on a cold winter's night or a cold winter's morning than a cup of coffee with some nice biscotti to dip into it. So biscotti is an Italian cookie, and the word biscotti actually means twice baked. The process of making the dough isn't different than making any other type of cookie. It's just the creaming method. Because I hate dishes, I meased out all my ingredients according to the steps of the creaming method. So in my mixing bowl, I have my butter and my sugar. In my wet ingredient bowl, I have my eggs and my liquid flavorings. In my dry ingredient bowl, I have my flour, my baking powder, and my salt. And then I have my mix-ins. So I have pistachios and cherries for this biscotti. I really like the combination of pistachio and cherry over, I've seen a lot of pistachio and cranberry. I think it's because cranberries are a little less expensive than cherries, but I just love the flavor that the cherry brings, especially when you dip it in the dark chocolate. When it comes to our eggs and flavorings, I have 4 eggs. I have half a cup of amaretto. Amaretto is an almond liqueur. I believe it's almond and apricot actually, and it just has a sweet, nutty flavor. It's one of my favorite liqueurs actually. It's really nice to just have on the rocks with the biscotti as a dessert. Now, if you were gonna make a hazelnut version of this biscotti, I would recommend switching out the amaretto for frangelica to boost that hazelnut flavor. Alright, so now we're going to get started. We're going to cream our butter and sugar. We're going to slowly add our eggs and flavoring once the butter and sugar is light and fluffy and we've scraped down. The emulsion might break. So what that means is it'll kind of look like a broken soup of eggs and butter. And if this happens, it's not the end of the world. You might lose some air, but we still have the baking powder going in, so it'll be okay. After we have all our eggs incorporated, we're going to add our dry ingredients. So that's going to be our flour, our baking powder, and our salt. Once that's all mixed in, we're going to add in our pistachios and our cherries. All right guys, so we just made our dough. So now it's time for my favorite part. It's fun. We're going to make this into a couple logs. I like to make them about the size of my forearm so I can carry them into the fridge like a baby. So I'm just gonna throw some dough on the plastic wrap and then I'm gonna extrude it into the logs. That's why I love the industrial plastic. So I'm gonna loosely cover it. So I want to get it about my middle finger touching my pointer finger. That's kind of the circumference of the tube that I want. Now, the bigger you make this tube, the longer your biscotti are going to be. So that's what you want to think about. Alternatively, you could form it, if you want bigger biscotti, you can form it into a log on your sheet pan. I recommend actually doing this on the back of the sheet pan so it's easy to slide on and off. But for me that's good. You can see that it's about that size, so it's easy to carry. and that'll go in the refrigerator. Again, I can handle it. That's why I'm doing it this way. So if you want long, because we're gonna bake it like this, and then on the second cut, we're gonna cut this way. Now that's gonna give us those kind of like half moon shapes. So if you want longer biscotti, you need to go longer this way. Okay, but I like, you know, I have two with my coffee, so this is probably gonna spread about here. So it's gonna give me the length that I personally like. But if you want those super long ones, you probably want to make it twice as fat as this. All right, I'm gonna throw these in the refrigerator. I'm gonna set my oven to 350. Alright guys, so I actually wound up putting my dough in the freezer because when I do these videos I have to unplug my refrigerator because it makes too much noise. So it wasn't really cold enough in there. You want to just make sure it's cold enough where it doesn't really stick to the plastic wrap. So you unroll it and it holds its shape. Now I'm going to place this in the center of the parchment. Put it there. See, it's not really sticking to my hands. It's so cold. That's good. But it's still not frozen, even though it's in the freezer. Alright, so my last step before putting it in the oven, this is just sugar in the raw. This is your cheapest option when it comes to like a sanding sugar. You can use those nice colored sugars or I think it's pronounced Demerara sugar. But this turbinado sugar, which the brand name you're probably familiar with is sugar in the raw, it's gonna hold its shape and create a nice crust on the outside. This is what's left of like a 3-pound box. I've been using for a couple years now. So I'm just gonna put it on top. So not too thick, just sticking to the cookie dough. Also, you'll notice I have the pan flipped upside down. That's so later I can slide this on and off very easily. So we're gonna wait till those are golden brown and they spring back when we touch them. Alright guys, so once you have your biscotti baked in your log, you'll know it's done because when you push it down, it's gonna spring back. So it's not leaving a fingerprint, it's hard, it's golden brown, it looks nice and dry. So I'm going to let these cool down before I start cutting them, because if I try to cut them now, they'll probably crumble. Guys, so it took about an hour and 10 minutes to bake all the way through. And now we're going to cut them into the biscotti shape that you're familiar with. Now, you can see what I'm talking about, where if you want a longer one, just make your log wider, right? Because this is a section of this. There's also two ways you could cut it. This log I cut just straight down, mainly because I wanted to see how it was going to cut. Sometimes if the chunks of fruit and nuts are big, you're more susceptible to the cookie breaking or crumbling. But you can also cut it on an angle, on a bias, to kind of elongate the biscotti a little bit more. I always eat the end pieces. So also these are about 1 finger thick. Some of them are a little fatter, which is okay. I wouldn't go more than 2 fingers, but trying to go skinnier just because it'll be crispier. Because when we toast them, we want to get all the way through. Now the skinnier you go, the more chance you have of it cracking. So just keep that in mind. That's also why we're not doing this when it's super hot. Now I'm using a serrated knife for this. If you don't have one, make sure your chef knife is really sharp. So we cut the log into the biscotti cookies. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put them back on the sheet tray and we're gonna toast them. So the cookies are cooked all the way through now, and we're just kind of like drying them out and toasting them. So we don't need to worry about them spreading, so we can put them as close together as possible. So we're gonna toast them on one side. Could take about 7 or 8 minutes, and then we're gonna flip them over and toast them on the other side. And eat these as a snack. You can see I'm getting a nice light toast, so I'm just gonna flip them over. To dry out the other side. Now we don't really want to get too much color, but we want it to be dry. So once your biscotti look nice and golden brown on both sides, it's time to take them out of the oven and just let them cool. Alright guys, so my cookies are done. They're nice, they're about room temperature, maybe a little bit warm. I'm not worried about that. Toasted on both sides, they look great. Now for the final touch, I got my bowl of chocolate. It's just melted chocolate. Alright, make sure you're using a nicer chocolate. You can get them on sale. I think you say it is Goutard, but it's a good chocolate. I think it's from San Francisco. It's much like Ghirardelli. So I would go with something like that, where it's moderately priced, but it's still a couverture chocolate, so it'll temper well. Now I didn't temper this chocolate, I just melted it, speaking of temper. So you're gonna see pretty much every biscotti video finish it off by taking a biscotti and dipping it halfway like this. Alright, which is, it looks nice, and you can do it this way. There's nothing wrong with that. However, I'm gonna do something a little different. Now you might be thinking, Grace, why are you going through all the trouble to dip the bottom of the biscotti? And I didn't burn it. It looks great. The reason why I'm doing this is because when you start thinking like a chef, you want every bite of what you're creating to be the perfect bite. So if I make a biscotti like this, and only half of the cookie is coated in chocolate, then you're only gonna get chocolate in half of the bite. Now, I still want to show off the beautiful fruit and the nuts in the cookie and this lovely sugared top we put on, but I still want chocolate in every bite. So that's why I'm gonna do the bottom half of the cookie, because you're gonna eat the cookie this way, so you'll still get chocolate in every bite. So you gotta make sure you have a longer flat surface. I'm just gonna do the bottom of the cookie, and I'll scrape the excess off. A nice thin coat, just a hint of chocolate. You don't want, we're not trying to bite through a chocolate bar before we get to our cookie. Alright guys, so while I'm waiting for the chocolate to dry, I'm gonna try one anyway. So biscotti are traditionally eaten with coffee, but I don't have any. But another thing you can do is you can have it with a dessert liqueur. I'm gonna have mine with some amaretto because it's in the cookies. Makes sense. But you can also just have it with like a hot chocolate or tea, whatever you like. So thanks for stopping by Chef Grace's place. Don't forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and leave a comment. Let me know what your favorite kind of biscotti is. Nice and crunchy.